Hello everyone, it's Rosie or Rosie in the Rockies here on YouTube and on Instagram, and this is Flosstube number 9. This is my update from, I believe, December 26th, 2024 through the end of January 2025. Today is early in the morning on 30th. A lot to share with you. There's an update on hashtag Stitching from Stash 2025. I have a fully finished object, a start and finish for my January blessing stitch, a new start for New Year, New Start, and progress on 4 other WIPs that I brought into 2025 from 2024, and then a plan for a new start in February. I'm going to mention several people in this video throughout who have been part of my stitching journey in the last month, and I will list everyone and everything that I mention in the description box below. So let's start with Stitching from Stash 2025. This is a hashtag that I started and shared about in a video just before the new year about my plans for 2025 to really focus on enjoying the patterns and the flosses and the fabrics that I already own, and to focus less on acquisition. I'll link that video with my 2025 plans in the description box. I also started a Sal on Instagram, and the cross stitch calendar moderators added it there, so thanks Erin, Amity, and Alex. I'm inviting everyone who's a needleworker or crafter to join. The cell is very flexible in how you can join. You do not need to only stitch from stash all year long. You do not need to refrain from purchasing. All you need to do is anytime you are using fabric or floss or a pattern that you had before 2025, or if you're working on a WIP that you started before 2025, to use the hashtag. So for example, if you have a WIP from 2024 or earlier that you pull out a single time in 2025, that's great. You can use the hashtag. If you buy a new pattern, but you use flosses from stash, you can use the hashtag. And if you're stitching from stash at any point this year, I'd love to hear what you're doing. So my stitching from stash update for January is that I've stitched entirely from stash all month long. It's been so fun. It's allowed me to focus on and just enjoy what I own, and also enjoy a couple things that I purchased a few years ago and hadn't used yet. Several folks on Flosstube and Instagram have also joined, who I'll share here and I'll link below. So Maria the Green Stitcher on Flosstube and Instagram is working on lots of her WIPs from prior years, and she's focusing on enjoying what she has. The Flosstube Stitcher Carolyn, who also has a Flosstube and an Instagram, is stitching a beautiful little cookbook. I've never seen a cross-stitch project that ends up as a book when it's finished that isn't like a needle keeper. And hers has recipes in it, and it's holiday themed. It's so sweet. I can't wait to see it when she shows it finished. And then several folks on Instagram have joined. So the Crafty Daffodil Corner just finished a project from 2024 that they brought into 2025. Volcano Knots stitched a beautiful reproduction sampler by the Wishing Thorn from Stash. Rowan Moon has been stitching a medieval mermaid. It's lovely. Cross Stitch Spain is working on a Star Wars kit. I think it's from Dimensions, and I think they said that they've had it in stash for a few years now. It's coming along really nicely. And Deborah Stitches had a start and finish on a Nora Corbett letter, the kind where there's a letter and then like a mermaid on one side of the letter. It is just beautiful. The beads on that thing look so sparkly in Deborah's photos. It feels so motivating to me to watch these stitchers stitch from stash. It's making me think about all the things I've acquired in the last almost 5 years I've been stitching, and feeling grateful that financially I can afford this kind of hobby. And it's also bringing me lots of enjoyment to play with all of these beautiful threads and fabrics and patterns. So I invite everyone to join. If you're doing any stitching from stash this year, please tag me in your video or your Instagram, or comment down below and let me know what you are working on. Let's get into the stitching. All right, the first thing I have to show is an FFO, or fully finished object. At the end of 2024, I finished Lovebirds by Nora Corbett. I love this design. I stitched it for 2 friends who, after 10 years together, have gotten engaged. They're getting married this summer. I stitched using all the called for floss and beads on a fat quarter of 32 count Morganite by Fiber on a Whim. Here is what it looked like when it was finished before I framed it. And then I did frame it myself using a frame I found, I think, at Home Goods for something like $15 or $16. It was really inexpensive. Here is some photos of the final product. What I liked about this frame is that it's deep, so the glass is about a 1/4 inch away from the backing, which made it perfect for the larger beads in the piece. And when I gifted it to my friends, they absolutely loved it. I will say there were some wrinkles I could not get out of the fabric, and I consider myself a master ironer and steamer. I've been ironing since I was a little girl, and I was one of my household chores, and I tried all of the tricks. I tried the spritzing with water and vinegar. I tried the putting it in the shower. I tried using medium heat, no steam, and then high heat, lots of steam, and then the combination of those things. I even tried blocking it, so getting it just a little bit damp, and then trying to block the whole thing. And there were certain places where the wrinkles just wouldn't come out. And I think I've decided either it was my tension from stitching, or maybe it was the way the fabric was hand dyed. Now, in most angles, when you look at the piece, if you're not looking for the wrinkles, you won't be able to tell they're there. And I don't think my friends noticed. And honestly, if they noticed, I don't think they would care. But it was irritating that after 2 hours of ironing and trying all the tricks, I couldn't get those last few wrinkles out. But such is life. Life is imperfect, and so is my stitching. So there we go. I am really happy with the finished product, and I hope my friends enjoy it, and they're as happy as these birds look. Next is my Blessings stitch for January 2025. I started this one on January 1st, and I finished it early in the morning of January 5th after a couple of very late nights because I didn't want to put it down. This is Chronicles of Oline Marie Volume 2 by Summerhouse Stitchworks, and here is the finished product. So here it is. I stitched this on a piece of 36 count Heartland by Picture This Plus with DMC flosses from Stash. I did switch out 2 of the flosses, so I switched out 573, which was more of a cream, for 712, which is closer to a light cream or white in these flowers, because 573 was the exact same color as the fabric, and so it would look like there was nothing there at all. And then I started stitching one side of this inner border here with the called for DMC 502, and it somehow looked too blue. I'll insert a photo. So I started agonizing over it a little bit, and then I consulted with Angie Slowly Crafts, who I'll mention at the end of this video as well. And after some consultation, I switched up the 502 for 580, which is more of this medium green you see, kind of a muted medium green. This is such a pretty stitch. It reminds me of Art Deco design and floral design, 1970s flowers, and then like the Colorado country aesthetic all at once. This is definitely my vibe. So I was really, really happy with the end result. And I already bought a little 6x6 square frame that looks like a kind of distressed white shabby chic wood. So I'm hoping that at the end of February I'll have this fully finished to show you. And my other new start is my New Year New Start, Cittlewick Green by Rosewood Manor. This design I fell in love with when I saw it in the spring of 2024, and I just felt I had to have it. And then my older son kind of created a story around these two houses and the two larger birds that are way out of proportion to the houses, and then the two smaller birds. And he had been pestering me to start it. So I did start it this month, and I could not be happier with it. This is what it looks like. So here it is. I'm stitching it using all the called for weeks flosses on a piece of 40 count Mocha by Weeks Dye Works. This fabric is a little more mustard colored than what I think of when I think of Mocha, but I think it's exactly the right contrast, at least for me, with this lettering that I just love. I can't get enough of this alphabet, and I'm usually not an alphabet person. I think alphabets are beautiful in samplers when others stitch them. I'm very attracted to them, but I never want to stitch alphabets myself. But this alphabet, something else. I should point out this is not an I, it's the beginning of an H. I'll also shout out the other stitchers who commented on my Instagram post when I first posted that this was my New Year New Start. And I also mentioned in that post that I couldn't find any other posts of other folks stitching this. So I'm very proud to say that I enabled Tamra at LitCat Stitches on Instagram and Flosstube to start this as well. Tamra has so many beautiful projects and just a very calm and lovely way of talking about her stitching. Then I fangirled because the Thread Gremlins commented, and I think one of them is starting it soon. I'm behind on your videos, Thread Gremlin ladies, but please let me know when you do start or if you have started so we can stitch on it together. And then Erin, Cozy Town Stitches on Instagram, and half of the Hathaway Stitchers on Flosstube suggested a stitch along. So Erin, I don't think you watch me, but if you do watch, I'm waiting for you to start a sal so that we can all stitch on this together. I just want to show you all the variegation in these blues and greens. I don't know if you'll be able to tell. These flosses are lovely. Look at those tiny stitches. I love this piece. Can't wait to pull it out in February. Okay, and now my whips. My first whip and one of my focus pieces for January that will continue to be a focus in February is Mirabilia's Renaissance Mermaid. I'm aiming for a February finish because it's a 40th birthday gift for a friend and I need to frame it before the end of March. So I'd like to finish it before I select and order a frame. The last time I showed it in my end of December 2024 WIP parade, I had finished all of the full crosses and the 1/1 skin, and I had not started the back stitching or any of the beading. And I am using all the called for, I should mention. So here is what it looked like at the end of December 2024. And this is what she looks like now. And she is in my 17 by 17 Q-snap because I will be beading on her later this weekend. So as you can see, I did the very unconventional thing of starting the beading at the bottom rather than the top of the design. That was because I don't have a scroll frame, and so I'm gonna end up doing the very end of the piece that doesn't currently fit in the Q-snap by hand. And I thought it would be easier to do her, the very top of her crown by hand. I'm very happy with how it's turning out. I did realize late last night, because I was stitching on it after midnight, that I had made a mistake with these beads right here. They're supposed to be the smaller turquoise beads, but I'll pull those out and fix that. And I did want to mention a couple of things about the beads. So the first thing is that these turquoise beads in the scales of her mermaid tail, I don't think are being produced by Mill Hill anymore, or maybe they are just out of production right now. I'm not sure. This was also true a couple years ago when I kitted this up. And so when I kitted up at the stitching shop, Christine at the shop suggested these Sundance beads, size 11, in the color Rainbow Bahama. A lot of these beads have a misshapen hole on the inside, so I'm noticing that there are many of them that I can't use even with a teeny tiny beading needle, so just to be aware of that. I think I bought 3 packs of these, so I think there should still be enough and I'll be able to finish her, hopefully. If not, I'll find some kind of substitute for wherever they end up on top. I also made the decision to have all the beads face lower left to top right, as if there was a wave kind of pushing her, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I think about beads too much and then sometimes not enough. And then the last thing I'll say about the beads is I am stitching on the called for 32 count linen. So there are some places, particularly in the scales of the tail, and then also around her little purse, where the beads are too crowded. And in some places, I just left them be, and they're, for example, too crowded here, and so there isn't a straight line as intended or suggested in the pattern. I thought that was fine because when I left one off, there was too much space. And then there are other places where I removed a bead. So what that means is there are some places in the pattern where, especially here where it looks like there are supposed to be a lot of scallops in her tail, where the scallop isn't a perfect half circle or like a moon type shape, they're a little bit more wonky, but they're sparkly, so is anyone really going to care? And the friend who this is for is not a stitcher, so I don't think she'll notice or mind. There's some of the sparkle. You can see the one treasure area, but there's another treasure at the bottom. Her purse. I'm really enjoying her. All right. My next WIP that I worked on, and I actually worked on it for, I think, almost a week, is Dimensions Butterfly Forest. This is my oldest WIP. Here is what it looked like at the end of December when I showed it in my WIP parade. In the photo, you'll see I got to the halfway point of the design in terms of the full and half crosses, but I hadn't backstitched the left side of what I had cross-stitched. And while I was working on it, this month, a couple different things happened. So let me show you what it looks like now. As you can see, I've made quite a bit of progress. So I backstitched these flowers, both of these butterflies and the leaves, and then I started stitching upward, and I was able to get this butterfly kind of framed a little bit and filled in at the bottom, some of these trees, some of those trees up there, and a few of these flowers done. Obviously from here up it has not been backstitched yet, but while I was stitching that larger butterfly in the center, I was watching Sophia Stitching Love's WIP Parade and saw that she's also stitching this piece. I'm not sure how I missed that because I watch her videos. So I commented, and Sophia and I decided that every Tuesday, starting the first Tuesday of February, we're both going to work on Butterfly Forest. If you'd like to join us, please let us know. And if you're not watching Sophia, she has so many beautiful designs and a lot of variety, from samplers to full coverage to fancy ladies. And she's kind of no nonsense about some of her stitching, which I really appreciate. So highly recommend her. We'll link her Flosstube and her Instagram below. And I think that if I work on this piece 4 days a month, it will be done before November, when it's a little girl's 10th birthday who loves butterflies and who I'm stitching this for. My next piece is Martha Walmsley, 1847, by Hands Across the Sea. This is the first hats piece that I'm stitching, although I have several hats charts in stash, and I did buy their most recent red box, which should be arriving next week. I absolutely fell in love with this piece when I saw it on Contented Needleworkers Kim's channel and Peregrine Stitcher Haley's channel. I do need a magnifying light to work on 40 count fabric, but I don't mind. I set up in my dining room. And I started this in the last 2 weeks of December 2024. So here is what it looked like at the end of 2024. I had just started the top left corner. And then I worked on it for a full snowy weekend at the start of January. And then for 20 hours during the 24 hours of cross stitch marathon weekend. So I think at this point I've worked on it for over 30 hours total since I first started it in December. It was really hard to put this piece down. And this is what it looks like now. Because of our lighting today, we have a fairly cloudy day. We're under winter weather advisory. The fabric looks much more mottled than it is in real life. It's a very subtle modeling. This is a 40 count tabby cat linen in the color Lollybrock. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And if you order the kit from Hobby House Needlework, this is how it comes with this fabric. So what's new since my WIP Parade is half of the top border, I think this floral motif, or at least part of it, and then the beginnings of this floral motif in a vase. You can see this is where the vase starts. I petered out at the end of the 24 hours of cross-stitch marathon when I was getting close to 20 hours. I am really in love with this pattern. I'll show you a close-up of how delicate some of the stitches are. Oh, I think they're so pretty. And yes, the border is finicky. There are a lot of color changes. I am not bothered by that yet, but one of my favorite things about this piece is the border itself. So I'm sure at some point I'll get tired of the border, but so far no two flowers have been the same, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I also want to call out the folks on Instagram and Flosstube who also worked on this piece during 24 hours of cross stitch. So Ina Kathleen at Ina Stitches on Instagram, Beata or Beata Romana on Instagram, and April Heirlooms, who has both a Flosstube and an Instagram. I'll link all of their accounts below. I can't wait to pick her up again. So Ina, Kathleen, April, Beata, if you're going to pick this up, please let me know, because I would love to stitch on it with others like we did during the 24 hours of cross stitch. And the last WIP I worked on was something I worked on for several days. This is going to be my focus piece when I finish Renaissance Mermaid. And I'm showing you a photo of it, of the cover photo, rather than an actual paper, because I purchased the PDF version. And this, of course, is Twisted Band Sampler by Northern Expression Needlework. I'm doing a blue and green conversion to mimic some of the alpine lakes here in Colorado. And if you want to hear more about that, you can check out my 2024 WIP Parade, which I'll link below. Here's a photo of what Twisted Band Sampler looked like at the end of December. I had finished 5 of the 17 bands. And here it is now. I'm stitching with DMC, mostly 2/2, with some 1/1 for some of the finer specialty stitches. And I'm stitching it on a piece of 28 count Stonewashed by Seraphim Fabrics, which is a really loose weave. And I really like the color contrast. And if it doesn't make sense to you yet, it will make sense as the greens get lighter and start moving into some of the light blues and some of the later bands. So in the last month, I stitched all of band 6 and half of band 7. And I'll show you a close-up if you promise not to judge how wonky some of the specialty stitches are. I am learning. This is my very first time doing specialty stitches, so it's a process, and I have made a few mistakes, but that's okay, because it means my Twisted Band Sampler will be different from everyone else's. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the learning. I also want to mention a new Flosstuber I found who's also stitching Twisted Band Sampler with a different color conversion. This is, I think it's Ajar, Ajar Stitches on YouTube, who recently posted their first Flosstube video. And again, I'll link them below. Okay, that's all of the stitching I did. It was a very productive month. Plans for February: I'm going to try and finish Renaissance Mermaid, or get as far as I can on her. And then I need a new start, of course, because my startitis is still in full force. So Angie Slowly Crafts on Flosstube and Instagram, and I decided to have a February new start where we're starting different patterns, but both of them have a red house. Angie's going to start Strawberry Fields by Blackbird Designs, and it's her first time using hand-dyed threads. I'm very excited for her. I highly recommend Angie if you haven't watched her videos and don't follow her on Instagram. She has close to 50 WIPs, and they range from smaller pieces to very large full coverage. Lots of bright colors. Some of her pieces are very whimsical, and then others are landscape scenes. She has a few religious pieces. She has a some very cute kind of pieces, some sweet animals. She's doing the Arctic animal sow. And as a human being, she's just so kind and generous with her positivity and her supportive comments. And I just really appreciate her and love following her stitchy process and her stitchy progress. So my new start with a red house will be Manor at Quaker Hill by Brenda Gervais, or With Thy Needle and Thread. And I mentioned my older son has a story about the house in Cittlewick Green. My younger son has a story about this house and Manor at Quaker Hill. And so he's been pestering me about when I'm going to start it. So Angie and I are starting our red houses on February 1. And I think we've agreed this is more of a start along rather than a stitch along. So if you have something with a red house and want to either start it or pull it out with us in February, please let us know. I think that's all I have to share. Again, if you plan to stitch on anything in February where any element of the needlework is from stash, we'd love it if you joined our hashtag Stitching from Stash 2025. Feel free to tag me or comment below that I can follow your progress. And I'll just end this video by saying that I hope every single one of you and your loved ones are safe and healthy, and that your needlework brings you peace. Happy stitching, everyone.